Thank you for joining me. This is part two of the Democratic plan to defeat Trump in 2020. The idea is to have a race war, essentially, or to have extreme racial conflict. It's not enough to just say that the usual lies, like that Trump is a racist and that all the rest of us have something against black men and women and therefore we're evil. Now it's that we're trying to instigate a violence. We're trying to instigate an incident of violence, which is really a way for them saying that that's exactly what they're trying to do. As I mentioned in part one, Jeff Kuhner, radio talk show host at WRKO, very good host, talks about how his Croatian parents, growing up in a communist country, they would always be able to tell what the regime was going to do because, after all, in a country like that, they had open and blatant censorship, unlike here where it's less informal. And the way they could tell is that whoever they were attacking was really what they themselves were doing. This is classic communism. So when they start attacking President Trump and the rest of us for trying to instigate violence, we know that that's exactly what they're doing. And you can tell that it's planned. You can tell by how coordinated they are. It's not just the shows coming out on Netflix that say go out and punch a Nazi, right? Now, how do they define Nazi? Again, this isn't, old fashioned National Socialist Germans. We're talking about anyone who doesn't goose step to the left is a Nazi. You and I could be Nazis. Anybody, they decide. It's become a generic term for conservative. It's a euphemism. It's a dog whistle. And so thus they're saying you can go out and commit violence because we're so evil. And that's exactly what they're going to do. Or they're going to try to instigate us to commit violence. As I said in part one, I mean, in the 2016 election, they had hired people, this guy Fovel and this other guy, I forget his name, were hired by an agency to go out and try to instigate trouble at Trump rallies, try to, harass Trump supporters at rallies to get them to throw a punch or to get them on camera doing something violent so they could go out with a narrative that the Trump people are violent, which of course the opposite is the truth. And of course it's a strategy that I could trace back in recent times to the election of 2008 or 2012 when Mitt Romney was confronted with this so-called war on women. Where did they come up with that? There was an ad agency in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island. The name escapes me right now. That actually came up with this idea. They were paid, marketing people who said, well, why don't we just accuse the Republicans of engaging in a war against women? They're trying to abolish abortion, which is the main piece of it, but it's worse than that. It's, that they want to put women barefoot and pregnant, and they don't like women. And so you heard suddenly, as if overnight, this mantra: war against women, war against women. Mitt Romney's in a war against women. And then, of course, the implication: religious people are in a war against women. And that turned out to be the main theme of that campaign. That's what they ran on. They needed to have a theme. In 2016, of course, they used the racism term. But even, the white people and all that stuff and race conflict, what I'm seeing is that this is going to get much, much worse. It's going to get violent, and it's going to get on the street where you're going to have people committing an act of violence. I mean, the other incident I could mention, and even though it was not seen as directly related to the campaign, was in 2012, the attack on Trayvon Martin, which was a real thing. I mean, Trayvon Martin was killed unjustly. However, the issue, the tape of that was doctored, and the issue was presented in such a way that the race element of that was exaggerated. Never mind the fact that the guy that attacked him was not white, and never mind the fact that they went out with a picture of Trayvon Martin when he was 14 years old, looking like a nice, innocent, all-American boy, which he was at the time. But that's not what Trayvon Martin looked like at the time of this attack. I mean, it was a much different person. And not that he deserved to, of course, not deserve to lose his life, but it was a bigger issue than just a race question. It was turned into a race question because that was a way to defeat Mitt Romney through indirect dog whistles. The Republicans have something against black people, and here's a reminder of how racist America is. And we know why America is racist. It's racist because Republicans are racist, not us. And thus they were able to really galvanize their vote. So we need to watch in this coming year for violent instigation. I mean, we need to be careful to not get swept up into it. We have to, in the real sense, resist the urge to fire back. We have to keep, they've already tried hoaxes all over the place, not just Jesse Smollett, but apparently there are others where people are like, trying to stage this race conflict. And I do think it's going to get real. It's going to get violent. You're going to see people ginned up to commit violence, and that's what they're going to. That's what they're going to do to defeat Donald Trump. Because I mean, I even had some nut tell me that when the baseball game in Washington with Republican congressman was shot at by some crazy Bernie Sanders supporter, and Steve Scalise was almost murdered, that this was Trump's fault because Trump is creating an atmosphere of hate. So, it doesn't matter, what happens. The point is it's going to be blamed on Trump, either directly or through a whisper campaign. So that's the strategy for, in my opinion, for 2020. Mark my words. We're going to see an uptick in this. I've already seen it. Listen to the progressive radio people. Listen to people like a good barometer, as I said in part one, is Michelangelo Signorile on progressive radio. I'm not recommending that we listen to him. I do because I like to find out what they're thinking. And he's already all cranked up about the violent instigation of Trump and his people and how they're threatening violence and they're encouraging violence without, I mean, it's obviously he's getting marching orders, I think, probably from some ad agency, maybe the same people who cooked up the war against women. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on that. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a great afternoon.